Says they push it's live.
So that red is live.
Red is live.
Okay. Gotcha, wasn't
Is this working, the red? Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Dana Point City Council Tuesday, January 21st, 2020. Madam Clerk, would you please provide the roll call?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All members of the council are present with the exception of Councilmember Mueller this evening.
Thank you very much. Mr. City Attorney, is there a need for a closed session?
How about now? Working? Yes, Mr. Mayor. First item this evening is a conference with legal counsel as a result of anticipated litigation due to the significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. We have one case to discuss. In addition, we have a conference with legal counsel as a result of existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1. We have 5 cases to discuss. The first is a matter of concerned residents of Dana Point versus the City of Dana Point, Orange County Superior Court case number 2019-0111-789-2 CUTT-CXC. The next is the City of Dana Point versus New Method Wellness et al., Orange County Superior Court case number 302017009041169. Next is Laguna Beach Silver Living et al. Versus City of Dana Point, federal case number 8:1-CV0024AGJDEX. Next is the City of Santa Ana versus City of Dana Point et al. Orange County, it's a federal district court case number 8:20-CV-00069. And lastly, we have the City of Dana Point versus the Sunshine Group, also known as the Seaside Inn, Orange County Superior Court case number 3020170091590. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. We will recess to closed session until 6 p.m. Good evening and welcome to the Dana Point City Council meeting of January 21st, 2020. We'll now reconvene our meeting. We'll start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Mayor Pro Tem Federico. And when it concludes, please remain standing for the invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gentlemen with hats, if you please remove them, and if everyone would join me in pledging allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The invocation this evening will be provided by VFW Post 9934 Chaplain Maury Hanson.
I just want to say Happy New Year to all of you guys. It's your first real meeting, getting you all back here again. And you all look even better than you did last year. As we open this meeting today, we're going to ask for the Lord's guidance and help. I want him to be with us as agenda items come before you. Provide us patience for all that many times it's become very challenging. May we have the endurance when we become tired. May we have wisdom when we become uncertain. May you be the inspiration when we seem to run out of ideas. May you be the peacemaker when anyone hurts. Be our comforter when we may sometimes be overwhelmed. And be our energy when we become very weary. Be our guide when we become confused. Be our forgiver when sometimes get it wrong. Be with our policemen, our firemen, and all of our staff. Be with the Lord. Be with us, Lord, as we go about this meeting, blessing all who participate, our city manager, our mayor, councilpersons, and all the city staff, and with the help of the citizens of this great and wonderful city that you guys provide such great leadership for. May you represent us all, and even when we don't agree, we will align ourselves with you in the name of freedom and compromise. And in your name we pray, Lord. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. Moving on, presentations and proclamations. We have none this evening, which brings us to the reading of the ordinance titles. At this time, the city clerk will read the titles of the ordinance listed on the agenda. Madam City Clerk, do we have any ordinance titles to be read?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one title this evening. It's for item number 10. It's a first reading and introduction of an ordinance entitled, An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Dana Point, California, amending Chapter 3.13 of the Dana Point Municipal Code to align with state public contract code provisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, that brings us to our consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and all will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the city council, the public, or staff request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Madam Clerk, do we have any items to be removed by the public?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. City Manager, do we have any items to be removed by staff?
No, sir.
Thank you. Do we have anything to be removed by council? Seeing none, I will move the recommended actions on the consent calendar.
I will second that motion.
Very well. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We now come to the public comments portion of the agenda. There will be a 3-minute time limit per person and an overall time limit of 30 minutes for this public comments portion of the agenda. At my discretion, the balance of public comments will be heard after the new business portion of the agenda. All comments are to be directed to the city council and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. State law prohibits the city council from taking action on a specific item unless it appears on the posted agenda. The city clerk would distribute any handouts you may have. I see, Madam City Clerk, that you've delivered the public comments. We have 3 tonight. And our speakers in order are Wayne Yost, followed by Penny Maynard, and Richard Sink. Saying that right? Okay. So first, I'd like to ask Mr. Wayne Yost. Please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, member of staff, members of our community. My name is Wayne Yost, 38-year resident of Dana Point, commander of Veterans of Foreign Wars, Post 9934. First of all, I'd like to welcome you back to our first council meeting of this decade. We're all looking forward to a lot of good things for our city, and we're very hopeful that your agenda is going to continue to benefit our city as it has in the past. And we all thank you for that. The reason for me coming up to the podium this evening is to notify the city council as well as the citizens of our city that Post 9934 will be celebrating its 25th anniversary of its founding next month. On February 11th, we will be having a special meeting at South Shores Church, 6:00 p.m. And I have invited all the members of the council as well as the city staff to attend and help us celebrate. In addition, I would like to extend an invitation to any veterans who served overseas in a hostile fire zone to attend this meeting and firsthand observe what Dana Point Post 9934 is all about. As many of you know, we are not just a social post. We don't have a bar. We don't have a clubhouse. However, we partner with the city as well as other veteran organizations in helping our veterans, our active duty military, their families, and also members of our community in a lot of different events. We have a lot of fun doing it. And so I am exuberant about extending this invitation to any veterans who may be out in the public and wish to observe what we do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Penny Maynard. Ms. Maynard.
Hello. Hi. Member Thesauric. Since I'm not good at this, I'm going to read. A while ago, I was told that some at the city had missed hearing about Dana Point Beach at public comments, and that's why I'm here. Someday, the city of Dana Point will be adding beach to its official name. Maybe it won't happen in my lifetime. Why add beach? There's Capistrano Beach and Marnock Beach. Destination marketing website states that Dana Point has many beaches. Dana Point has 5 to 7 or so beaches, although the city only owns Dana Cove Beach at the Ocean Institute. The others are county and state beaches, but they are still Dana Point beaches. Since over 50% of the city's revenue has in the past been provided by tourism for many years, it only makes sense to do all we can to increase that revenue stream in order to maintain the beauty, safety, and overall quality of life for the residents of Dana Point and for our visitors. Adding beach to the name of Dana Point will increase the revenue stream. My Pats, by the way, have a bye this year for Super Bowl. They only go to the Super Bowl every other year. As I like to say, count Tom's rings. 6. A word or two about Chambers of Commerce. Since this has been my career for over 25 years, Chambers of Commerce and small communities provide small businesses the most cost-effective tool to market their business. Everyone should belong, every business. My website that's being updated now by someone in Laguna Beach will provide for a year or more, no cost, one way to help various businesses in Dana Point promote their business. And it'll include areas and events in Dana Point and harbor events and harbor updates. So my business can grow and expand into Dana Point. I'm hoping that Patty Short will help me become a member of the Dana Point Chamber of Commerce after my not having been a member for 10 years. Thank you so much. See you soon.
Thank you, Ms. Maynard. Our next speaker is Richard Sink. Mr. Sink.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members and attendees. My name is Richard Senk. I recently moved back to Dana Point after 20 years of deciding where I really want to live, and just opened an office here in Dana Point after completing a contract at Nevada County as the co-chair of the marketing initiative for the Economic Resource Council. So I own a influential sales and marketing technology company. I put on workshops to help businesses, small businesses, do business on social media platforms. I've also recently launched an AI-powered, that's artificial intelligence for the non-techies in the room, video marketing service, which takes existing content assets that businesses have and converts them into rich media experiences very affordably and very easily. I just finished a big project at Lake Elsinore in promoting 100 acres with a developer and Lee and Associates. So all of this activity is available on my website for review at critical-connections.com. Just looking for some direction on how I can get involved in the community.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sink. Madam Clerk, are there any additional public comments?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. With that, I will close public comments. And that brings us to the council comments portion of the agenda. City council may discuss, act upon, or seek consensus on matters described in our council reports only if they're agendized with a complete written report included, or if an item arose subsequent to the posting of the agenda and the council determines that an emergency exists. Non-agendized items may be presented as informational only. This is where I will go around the horn and ask if the council members have anything to report. I'll start with you, Councilman Wyatt.
I have turned in my list of meeting. No, I have not turned in my list of meetings. I guess the new year has caught me unaware. And I will do that immediately, and I have nothing else to report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Lewis.
No, thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Federico.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one meeting to report on. I attended a board meeting of the Orange County Housing Finance Trust last week and a report back to our council where I represent the small cities in the trust there. The board voted to approve an administrative funding model that is right now a guideline for what the city's funding responsibility will be for next fiscal year, starting July of next year. And that number is basically almost exactly in line with what we thought when we signed up. So the estimate is $5,250 for our administrative funding to be a part of that trust. And the estimate was $5,000. And that number may actually come down, but that's a high end estimate. So it's sort of a report back to some questions council members had in the past.
Thank you very much. And I have nothing to report, but I will turn in my list of meetings and events to the clerk after the meeting. Brings us now to the public hearings portion of the agenda. Item number 12 is an appeal of a planning commission approval for coastal development permit. And I will call the item and ask Mr. City Manager, do we have a staff report?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our brand new Planning and Community Development Director, Brenda Wisniewski, will introduce the item for you, and there'll be a presentation by our Senior Planner, John Champa.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Mayor, City Council members, I'd like to go ahead and turn this presentation over to Senior Planner, John Champa, who is managing this project. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Visoric. City Council members, my name is John Champ. I'm the case planner for the project at 34312 Shore Lantern Drive. It's an appeal of a coastal development permit for the Bauman residents. The project site is located within the Lantern Bay Estates community, which is also within the Dana Point specific plan, for the city and is zoned coastal residential high density. As you can see here, the project site is starred and is the last remaining undeveloped lot within the community. Just to give a little background for the community and the project, the community was approved with an area plan that in 1980, which identified specific development standards for each residential lot within the community. The project is proposing a new single-family two-story residence, which is approximately 4,900 square feet within the community. It has received homeowners association approval. On November 18th, 2019, Planning Commission approved the project. However, it should be noted that Commissioner Nelson was in opposition to the project due to the location of the deck over the garage, which staff will be speaking to later in the presentation. On December 3rd, the appellant filed an appeal of the project, which is located to the north of the property. As you can see here, just for context of the site, this is an angular view, a 3D view of the site, identifying the appellant's property and the applicant's property. The applicant is in yellow, the appellant is in red. As you can see, most of the properties all of the properties along this street abut the slope and are located in very close proximity to it. Project is in conformance with all of the applicable development standards in the area plan, as noted before you. However, the deck patio setback above the garage is not mentioned within the area plan, and staff will be speaking to that issue later in the presentation. This is the topographical map or survey that was produced by the applicant's civil engineer, which identifies the top of the slope in in green, which is 92 feet, 8 inches from the front property line as the closest as dimensioned from the shared property line with the appellant. This is the proposed site plan of the first floor of the structure. As you can see, it does comply with all the necessary setbacks for the 5 feet for the garage, 5 feet for either side, and is stepped back from the top of the slope for the first floor. It's freezing on me. Can we someone cycle through? Oh, there we go. This is the second floor, which is in conformance with all the necessary setbacks. And as you can see, it does extend to the top of slope, still illustrated in green. These are some of the elevations of the property. As you can see, still identifying the top of slope in green, as well as illustrating the deck and patio cover that's located at the front of the property over the garage. This particular improvement is also displayed throughout the community with approximately 7 properties that do have similar conditions that were constructed and approved by the city as well as the homeowners association. The area plan does not have a specific standard for decks over the garage. However, it does allow for the garage to be set back 5 feet from the front property line. And staff will discuss this issue further as we proceed through the presentation. The appellant has identified 4 issues associated with the project. First, at the top of slope in question was not completed with a proper land survey. Approvals following the public hearing will be completed administratively without public input. The city and county has setbacks for the top of slope. However, the Planning Commission approved a 0 setback. The deck at the front of the house does not comply with the setback. So staff will go into detail of each one of these items. The first item being that the top of slope in question is in question and was not completed by a proper land survey. So the topographical survey, which was submitted with the application with the plans, was produced by a civil engineer who is allowed to produce a topographical survey to assist in identifying the top of slope location. However, in addition to this, staff has placed 3 conditions of approval on the draft resolution before you, that a land surveyor must complete a survey of the property to also go with the construction documents if the project is approved, to identify all of the applicable setbacks, top of slope, topographical conditions of the site. In addition to that, the top of slope must be staked during the construction process to ensure that that location is remained and will be a reference point through the construction to ensure that it's in compliance. And then third, that prior to any framing, the setbacks for the footings will be verified to ensure compliance with those top of slope and applicable setbacks associated with the project. Moving on to item 2, that the approvals following the public hearing will be completed administratively without public input. Per the city's municipal code, once the coastal development permit is approved, if it is approved, public comment on the project will end. However, the public does have an opportunity to review the project as it proceeds in reviewing the construction documents, being the building and grading plans, as well as any inspections and certifications as identified in the setback certification forms that would be required. All of those would be available to any member of the public who wishes to view those documents. Item 3, for the city and county grading manual setbacks to the top of slope. These setbacks are advisory based on science and site conditions. Now, these aren't definitive, and they defer to the zoning. The zoning would be the area plan, which allows for the structure to be located at the top of slope. The project is also reviewed under the Dana Point grading plan, given that the city has been incorporated since the area plan was approved, and that is the document that is the standard of review by Public Works. The city and grading manuals should be noted that both do allow the top of slope to be reduced to the zoning standard based on the soil conditions, construction design, and drainage provided for the site. The 4th item of the appeal is that the deck at the front of the house does not comply with the setback. As previously noted, the area plan is silent to decks located over the garages that are allowed to be set back 5 feet from the front property line. And as noted, Lantern Bay Estates has approximately 7 properties that have almost identical examples of decks located over the garages. The HOA has approved this proposal, and with that, the applicant will be speaking more in depth associated with this issue. However, a draft condition of approval number 20 has been placed. If the city council determines that the deck should be modified in compliance with the appellant's request, that the deck would be requested to be set back to the standards of the Dana Point specific plan. The project is in conformance with all of the requirements associated with the coastal development permit, in that the site is within a private community. However, it does not impact any public access or environmentally sensitive habitat, and the project complies with all of the applicable development standards. Being that those points, the project does meet all the necessary findings for the coastal development permit, and staff is recommending approval subject to the findings and conditions in the draft resolution before you. So that concludes staff's presentation. Staff and the applicant are available for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much.
So just again, to follow up on top of slope. So the top of slope is determined how, at this point, there's a land survey that will take place at some point further as part of the overall process, right, of permitting. But how is the current top of slope that was used by the, put by the civil engineer and used in these drawings determined?
So the civil engineer went through their necessary methods and practices, and Public Works can speak to that. However, staff did, going through the review process, did require that to be staked. because there was some concern from the neighbor that of the accuracy to the top of slope determination that required clearing of the landscaping that is at the back of the slope. And the staking positions were reviewed by staff as well as the homeowners association and were determined to be consistent.
And do they vary significantly from the properties on either side?
No.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have at this time.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Lewis, any questions?
May have some questions once I hear applicant and.
Very well. Mayor Pro Tem Federico?
I do have one question. Mr. Champa, does our zoning code allow for neighbors and actually a better way to phrase this question? Is it our zoning code or AP 80-6P or the development agreement that allow for the gate and the guardhouse at the end of Shore Lantern? I'd have to look to the approval of. Is it in our zoning code? I don't believe so. Okay. I also don't believe that our zoning allows for any random resident couldn't put a gate up at the end of their street, right? That's my understanding. Okay.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions regarding the top of the slope. I understand there was or the appellant is contesting the location of the top of the slope. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or determining how it was determined, or both?
I believe both.
Okay. So can you tell me how exactly it was determined and who makes that call and if they are justified or capable of making that call? Or does that question make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to explain that, and then if any additional information needs to be added by the Public Works Director, I'll let him jump in on that. But essentially, the project civil engineer, who's licensed and allowed to produce a topographical survey, identifies the topography of the site. At that time, with the production of that map, as well as reviewing of the site conditions, they established the location of the top of slope. That was then reviewed by staff, as well as the homeowners association, to ensure accuracy and consistency. At that point in time, there was consensus, and it was determined that that's where the location is to be.
Okay. I'll move on to the next issue brought up regarding the rear yard setback. Just looking for an explanation between 5 feet versus 7 feet versus no setback is what I understand was approved. Can you give me a little more explanation on the details of that?
Certainly. So the 5 versus 7 feet are associated with the city and county grading manuals. Those are manuals that assist in the development review of projects, looking based on the science and the conditions of the site. However, those do defer to the zoning ordinance at the discretion of the community or the Public Works Director. However, in those grading manuals, it does specifically identify that under certain conditions, given the soil construction and drainage, that's those setbacks, that 5 and 7 feet, can be reduced to 0 given the site conditions. And we have a number of sloped properties within the city. Some are entirely in the slope that are allowed to be constructed. So a setback to the top of slope is not a definitive element. There are other factors that come into play in the analysis of that.
Okay. So would it be fair to characterize it as maybe the rule is 5 or 7 feet, but there's an exception if certain conditions are found that you can reduce that to 0?
That's a fair characterization.
Okay. And that determination is made by who? The civil engineer?
By the Public Works.
By Public Works. Okay. And those findings were made in this case that an exception would apply?
Correct. And additional information will be provided during the construction process to ensure that the foundation designs and those features, as well as the drainage elements, do comply with the necessary elements to allow for that reduction. But based on the staff's review of the preliminary information, there's sufficient information to conclude that the setback can be reduced to 0.
Okay, thank you.
Pardon me, Mayor, I had a couple of comments to add, and Matt Sinacori might also. 2 main points here too is the determination, the method that was used in determining top of slope is the standard practice for all determinations of top of slope throughout the community. Also, an important point is the fact that the 0 rear yard setback is part of the area plan regulations. So that is with the solid definition. That is also how you can see in the aerial that all of the surrounding development is set at basically 0 or close to throughout the community.
Thank you. Mr. Sinacori?
Thank you. Just maybe simplifying it a little bit more. I think Brenda talked to it. Zoning code dictates you're allowed to go to the top of slope, 0 setback. Our grading manuals are technical documents that help our technical staff make sure the science is behind it. So we're allowed variations in that, but at the end of the day, the 0 setback's allowed by the zoning. I mean, I think that's the most important thing we could pass on.
Okay, thank you. Are there additional questions from council in light of what we've heard? Anything else? Councilman Wyatt, Councilmember Lewis? Mayor Pro Tem. Very well. Okay, Member. Okay. With that, I'm going to open the public hearing. Before I do that, I will quickly explain how the public hearing works. Both the appellant and the applicant will be given 5 minutes to make a presentation. Then there will be time for public comments on the issue. After that, the appellant and applicant will then have an opportunity with another 5 minutes to respond to anything that they've heard. And then any additional questions we may have for staff before I close the public hearing and bring it back to the council for discussion. So having that said that, I will open the public hearing and invite the appellant to make a presentation. The appellant here. These are the public comments, okay.
Yeah, no, this is from the appellant, or applicant rather,
Okay,
and this is the only public comment. Oh,
that's the wrong one. Okay. All right, it would appear that the appellant is not present to make a presentation. I'll ask one more time. Seeing that he's not here, I will then move on to the applicant. Is the applicant here? Yes, all right. I would invite you up to make a presentation on the project. And of course, would you please introduce yourself?
My name is Jason Torrance. I'm the architect representing the owners of the property looking to build this house, retired, and they would like to move in to their home in the beautiful city of Dana Point. I don't have too much of a presentation. I would just like to hopefully clarify some of the 4 points from the appellant. John did a great job of that, so this might feel a little redundant, but hopefully clarify some things. I'd like to start on the 4th point. I think that was the most misunderstood point at the Planning Commission, Commissioner Nelson, in regards to the setback of the deck on top of the garage. The garage setback is reduced to 5 feet as stated, and it is in the HOA guidelines. They actually encourage decks over the garage. The quote is, balconies, front balconies are often found over the garage to break up the front exterior. So this has been reviewed with a few edits from the HOA, and it has been approved. It's encouraged. My second point on that is, at one point it was mentioned that this is considered an architectural projection, in which case that would be something that goes over the setback. I'd say the definition of architectural projection does not apply to this, as it is a 5-foot setback and nothing's projecting over that 5-foot setback. The building still respects the standard. The rest of the building other than the garage still respects the 20-foot setback. Additional point, precedent has been established, and that was a big thing at the Planning Commission hearing. We were not prepared for this. We didn't have the photo exhibits that Commissioner Nelson was looking for, and that's what we have today on these slides. These are existing homes. So 7 of the 40 homes in Lantern Bay Estates have decks over the garage covered in a very similar manner to our proposed residence. That is 17.5% of the homes in the community have what we are proposing. Second slide should be a couple more examples. Sorry, I'm in charge of slides here. These are some more residents in the community, all covered decks over the garage. So I feel that precedence has been established. You'll find the similarities to this is our proposed residence, and we actually do set back quite a bit from the face of the garage as well, just in an architectural manner. That said, I'm going to move on to complaint number 1 from the appellant, this top of slope issue. There is no top slope setback. It's not a thing. In fact, the guidelines merely talk about a top of berm. And to quote the guidelines, this is a loosely defined element and is considered drainage only. This is direct verbiage from the guidelines. The only purpose of the berm is to establish temporary way to ensure drainage. Section 5A3, the berm was probably put on or near a survey mark. Just the verbiage alone tells you how loose this is. Section 5A4, the berm's just an assurance that proper drainage is away from the slope. And section 5B1 from the design guidelines, we are actually allowed to extend 9 inches past the top of berm. So as you can see, this is very loose. There's no setbacks. It's a very loosely defined element. In addition to that, this has been reviewed, restaked, cleared, as John mentioned, approved by site visits from Public Works, Engineering, HOA, the HOA's consulting architect, as well, obviously, our engineer. So this has been revised and revisited several times for its accuracy. And we have several statements from our civil engineer regarding his ability within the Business and Professions Code to conduct such surveying methods as a licensed civil engineer. I can get into that later if necessary. Moving on to point number 3, this 570 foot setback thing. I think the confusion is zoning setbacks versus structural building setbacks. Zoning setbacks are from the property line. When I talk setbacks, it's from a property line. Our building is set back 50 feet from the rear property line. There's some confusion trying to be put in place that there's a setback from the top of slope. This is just a building thing, structural soils reports, just to make sure life safety kind of code, not zoning and planning code. So that's kind of moving on from that, and just maybe that provides some clarification. And complaint 2 regarding public input, we're just following standard city processes. I believe this is the public input. And there's another statement about, public work determining public input regarding top of slope determination. So we leave that to our professionals, obviously. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we move to any public comments, I do want to state for the record, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Federico, for pointing it out. We did in fact receive a written correspondence from the appellant, and all council members do have a copy, if I could confirm that. Okay. And so we all do have that and will consider it as part of this appeal. We also did receive a letter from the applicant as well that we all have and will also consider as part of the appeal. So having said that, I will ask Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
No, there are no other public comments.
Okay. Well, That would bring us to the rebuttal time. Again, as the appellant's not here, and I would certainly offer the applicant the opportunity to say anything further if he wishes, but certainly knowing that that's not a requirement if he feels he has nothing left to add.
Sort of just playing off your, beyond the city, beyond the community gates, where people determine where you guys step in and where HOA guidelines versus city overrulings. It's all the appellant's points of topics are all concerning HOA design guidelines. They're not, and they're more restrictive as entities get smaller. That's the whole point. They're more restrictive than the larger governing body to establish character. So having HOA approval, be sort of overturned on those finer points by city council is just sort of a backwards process. So just sort of want to re-implement the fact that these points are, these top slope things are only discussed in the HOA design guidelines, the garage and 5-foot setback and whatnot. So that's all.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'll bring it back to the staff. If staff has any additional comments they'd like to add. Seeing none. What I'll do now is I suppose that brings us to the end of the public hearing. I will close the public hearing. And taking a look at the recommended action, it is that the city council deny the appeal and uphold the planning commission's approval of coastal development permit CDP 18 tax 0015. Do I have a motion on this item?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Federico.
I find that the staff's, for the record, because the appellant was not here, I just want to say that taking into account, I find the staff's work appropriate and
hang on one second. I'm sorry to interrupt. Before we begin discussing, I'm just asking if there's a motion on this.
I'm about to.
Okay.
And because I find staff's work appropriate and this project in line with AP 80-6P, I would move the item, the recommended action as written to uphold the planning commission's approval of this permit.
Okay, thank you. I will second that. And usually what happens is I offer the first opportunity to speak on the motion to the maker of the motion. However, do you have anything to add to that? Okay. I will go around the horn again for council discussion. Councilman Wyatt.
I would like to ask staff to bring up the slide that showed an aerial view down on the top of the lot and the properties. That one. Thank you. So I'm trying to understand two things from looking at this again after the discussion. One related to the deck on the front. Is there any, it does not appear that the deck would interfere with the properties on either side of it in any way that it would be problematic or, to them, based on looking at this and where it is related to how their properties are built. Am I correct on that? Or is there some reason that the deck would raise an objection based on views or any other thing that would affect the properties on the either side of it that you are aware of?
No, staff agrees with your assessment.
Okay. And in terms of setback and line of slope, it appears that the back of maybe it's the front of properties, the non-garage side of the properties up at that face of slope are all follow a pretty consistent line. This does not appear to extend beyond where the other properties extend. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay, those are the only things that I wanted to make sure I verified. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lewis?
Thank you. Okay, so on this slide, thank you for bringing that one. All right, so the applicant is the yellow star, the appellant, the red star. The appellant's property on the slope, is it in a different position than the applicants? They both appear to be on that slope. Is the appellant's 5 feet back, 7 feet back?
I believe the appellant's property is approximately 7 feet, or I'm sorry, 5 feet back at the ground floor. However, the second floor does slightly project out further.
Okay. And when, well, I don't know, maybe nobody knows, when they got approval at that point, was that an item of discussion for their approval, for the appellant's approval, that it was going to be a 5 foot versus a 0 lot setback on top of slope?
Staff didn't see any evidence of any specific discussion associated with the setback of the appellant's property.
And had the appellant discussed that issue? Did they want a 0? Did they just design a 5 foot? Was it an issue at all?
I believe the property was approved under the County of Orange. So the records are pretty limited associated with the development. And the current property owners, the appellant, were not the original builder. So we don't have that information.
And how about the one on the other side of the applicant? Does that have a setback, or is that a 0 on the top of slope?
There's improvements that are at the top of slope.
Okay,
have
so
a
it's
deck.
more in line with what the applicant is doing.
That's correct.
And on this street, on the slope side of Shore Lantern, is it predominantly people building with 0 setback on top of slope, or is it more akin to the 5 foot for a majority of those?
It honestly, it varies. There's some that provide 5. There's some that appear to be right at the top of slope. Like if you look at on the south view, the lower 2 structures appear to be right at the edge of the slope.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to tell from this. They all kind of look like they're right there.
They're all very close, and staff did do a site visit to determine the context in terms of what was out there, and felt like what's being proposed was consistent with that.
Were any of the houses built after appellant was occupying appellant's house, so that any of these other any other houses on this line had this issue come up?
This is the first that staff's aware of this issue coming up.
Did appellant occupy their house when others were building, not just the applicant? Were there other houses being built when appellant was in the house?
Not on this street that I believe.
Okay.
Most of the community has been developed in the 80s and 90s and into the early 2000s. And it's my recollection that the appellant has been in their property for approximately 7 years.
Okay, in the entire community, has this issue come up anywhere?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and on other streets, there's people on the top of slope and 0? Okay.
That's correct. In the standard of review by the Homeowners Association, they do go out and verify the top of slope. So that was a method that the city staff as well as the HOA worked on with the applicant, and also discussed the site visits with the appellant as well through the process.
Okay, so now I'm trying to understand. I understand, objectively and geographically what we're talking about, but what's the issue? Why the concern with the 5 foot versus the 0? What's the issue out there?
Yeah, I can only defer to their letters and just their
doesn't really say, other than, technically, they make an objective and technical argument, but I was going to ask them, what is the issue that they see if it's built on the 0 lot line, top of slope versus this 5 feet? Because I mean, if we're talking about something that's merely technical without any ramifications, that's a different issue to me than if they're talking about, well, here is the result of my neighbors building it here versus building it 5 feet back. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I'm trying to understand why we're even discussing this issue.
Understood. And one of the things to fall back on is that the area plan does allow the development to go to the top of slope, and that's been the standard of review by staff.
Yeah, no, I get the technical, and their letter is all about, numbers and technical, but I don't hear anywhere what problem this is going to cause, other than we have a technical argument and it says you're supposed to build 5 feet, and the other side said, no, we can build 0 feet. But I'm not hearing the applicant say, well, here's the harm that's going to happen if you allow this to be at 0 feet. And I'm not here. Maybe I'll ask our attorney about the area plan versus the zoning code and how those two mesh, if there's any conflict or one is silent. And then what harm are we potentially looking at?
So answering your second question first, just looking objectively at the pictures the slide rather, as you pointed out, this development seems to be consistent with all the other development in the street, which is relevant to the answer to your first question. As I understand it, the area plan, and Brenda, please correct me if I misstate this. As I understand, the area plan is silent as to this setback issue. And as it has developed, or as the project has developed over the years, the interpretation has been to allow encroachment into the quote unquote the setback. Under the city's zoning code, there is a setback that is that would prescribe this balcony going into the area that we're talking about. However, the zoning code for this particular area is trumped, so to speak, by the area plan, which has been approved by Coastal, whereas the zoning code for this area has not been the subject of an LCP for this area yet, and therefore technically does not apply in this particular area.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is Coastal Commission has approved the area plan that has nothing. It's silent.
It is silent on this issue, correct?
And there's a zoning code that talks about 5 feet.
Councilmember Lewis, if I can just clarify that city attorney is correct, and this applies to the deck over the garage. Didn't want to confuse you with the rear yard setback, as we previously were discussing, which is the area plan identifies as 0.
Okay, so when we're talking about the top of slope, we're talking only about the deck, not where the house
The top
rear
of
yard
slope,
setback is?
the top of slope, as we referring it to it, is the rear, and that is permitted to be 0 per the area plan. The description that City Attorney Munoz was describing was related to the deck, which is over the garage, which
Okay.
is at the street side.
All right, well, at this point, I'm still on the
top of slope?
The top of slope
Oh, I
and
apologize,
the
I misunderstood.
actual building of the house at 0. And so I
apologize. I thought you were
was,
talking about the front yard setback, not the rear yard
oh,
setback.
sorry if I didn't make that clear. So I'm still on I don't see that anybody's told me what the harm is either way, which kind of troubles me, because if we're talking about something that has no harm, I look at it differently than if we're talking about something that does. And then this area plan, that 0 setback, is that the rear yard, or is that only apply to the garage deck
That is the rear yard or top of slope.
with the area code?
That's the area plan, correct?
Area plan that says 0.
0.
Oh, actually, it's silent, right?
No, actually, it is very clear, as shown as being 0 in the area plan.
Okay.
The issue of silence is related to the deck that's over the garage.
Okay, so I'll deal with that in a minute. So my question was, when there's this potential conflict. One is silent, the area plan is silent, the zoning code has something. Where are we in terms of our legal position if we go one way or the other?
The area plan applies.
Okay,
That's the short answer.
okay, thank you. All right, so the second issue was the public hearing. Again, I want to know what's the issue there? I mean, we've had multiple public hearings here, right? They had the planning commission that was a public hearing. This is a public hearing. And it says by granting approvals, it has removed and replaced in the hands of staff, and we're not going to have more public hearings. Is that unusual?
No, it is not. Actually, the process that we are following is dictated by our zoning code.
Okay, and again, I'm sorry the applicant isn't here to answer these specific questions, but what is the harm that the appellant sees by not having more of these public hearings? Has that been discussed?
I think across the board, we can't really speculate as the appellant's
Right.
objective in trying to identify this as an issue.
That's why I asked. Has that been a topic of discussion throughout the approval process?
I can't speak to that.
Through some of my conversations with the applicant, it appears as though this point is associated with some of the later documents that will be produced, like the setback verification form and the survey, and a desire by the appellant to provide comments on those documents. However, that's not part of the building permit review process. Those can be reviewed and provided comments by staff, but the public hearing and comment portion associated with the project would be ended if the project was approved tonight.
Okay, so later documents, they're saying won't go before the public, but the appellant has a chance to review them and weigh in on that, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, 7-foot setback rear yard. I think we've done that one to death. Deck at the front of house. That's where we have the 12 versus the 4. 4?
That is correct.
12 versus 4. And I think as Councilman Wyatt was able to ascertain, this isn't interfering with anything on either side, impacting neighbors. What's the problem that appellant has expressed, other than a technical argument that it's not 4 and it's 12?
It seems purely technical in nature. The issue of the deck came up after the planning commission's discussion, so the appellant added that to the appeal process.
Okay, so at the planning commission public hearing, that was not something the appellant brought up, discussed, objected to.
That's correct.
Okay. And then just tell me the topo versus a land surveyor. If there is some difference later, I understand a land surveyor is going to come in as a condition and just verify the topo, right? What if there is a difference? What's the process?
Staff has discussed that with the applicant. The applicant's aware that if there is a discrepancy, it would default to the land surveyor's documentation and map production.
Okay, and the appellant's aware of that, right?
Correct.
And is there an issue as to who the land surveyor is? Is that the issue? I mean, it sounds like they're worried that the topo is taking place of a land surveyor, but our condition is putting that priority back on the land surveyor. So I'm not sure, again, what the issue is.
I think it was just a general concern that whatever is produced accurately. However, the land surveyor is a licensed professional, and it's their responsibility to ensure that what's produced is accurate.
And that is going to be done as a condition, right?
Correct.
Okay. And is there any concern with the integrity of this slope and drainage down the slope? Has there been any subsidence, any water drainage issues on this slope so far?
Not that we're aware of.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything else, Mayor Pro Tem? Well, I'd like to thank my colleagues for the questions they asked and staff for the excellent work you did on this appeal. My questions have been answered. I'm going to support the recommended action on this item. But before I call for the vote, I will check one last time if there's anything else any of my colleagues would like to add. Councilman Wyatt.
I just want to clarify one of Mr. Jampa's response to Councilmember Lewis on the setback. So on the slope side setback of the appellant's property, you said on both properties, both this one that the applicant put up and the appellant's or the other ones, there is a setback on the ground floor required. Is that correct?
Not required,
Okay,
but there is one that
but
exists.
they have one, and there's a 5-foot one on this property or something like 5 feet setback.
The first floor.
Yeah.
Is set back from the top of slope. However, the second floor does extend to the top of slope, and there are columns that lead down to the top of slope.
Right.
But that is consistent with the area plan requirements.
Right. And on the appellants, you said that they had a setback on the ground floor, but their second floor also extended somewhat beyond the ground floor setback. Is that correct?
That's correct. There was an architectural element that extends approximately 2 feet beyond the lower portion of the house.
Okay, so that's a norm. So there's not this hard, you have to set back certain, I mean, there's generally the second floors, it's not unusual for them to extend right up to the top of slope.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Anything in light of that? Councilmember Lewis.
Oh, sorry, where are you going? So I just want to say that for me, what really is driving my vote is that I'm just not hearing anything beyond a technical argument. While I appreciate the technical argument, and I haven't seen that in the papers that I've been presented, that my vote is really my vote is really resulting from, I haven't heard any actual harm that will be suffered by the appellant if this is approved per the applicant. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Federico.
Sorry, I just want to clarify something real quick. I would like to add that I also see no technical issues with this either. I believe all the technical questions have been answered. So I think it meets that criteria and the technical criteria of the appropriate planning and zoning documents.
Thank you. With that, I will call for the vote.
Mr. Mayor, if I can ask for a point of clarification, the draft resolution currently has the condition related to requiring the setback of the deck over the garage. Is the maker of the motion wanting to remove that condition to allow them to go to 12 feet? Or?
I understood that the planning commission approved it with the deck originally as designed.
That's
Is that
correct.
not true?
At 12 feet.
Then my motion was to in fact approve or to uphold the planning commission's decision and leave the deck as is.
Thank you.
And that was my understanding as well. Councilman Wyatt, Councilmember Lewis.
Yeah, that was my understanding as well, and that was one of the issues I had asked. What was the harm that the appellant had anticipated by having it 12 versus 4, and I didn't hear anything other than a technical. Thanks.
Very well. With that, I will call for the vote. I believe
Make sure I got this right. Yes is approving what the planning commission did.
it is a denying the appeal and upholding the planning commission. Okay, I believe all votes are in and that passes unanimously. All right, thank you very much. That will take us to
unfinished business. There are no unfinished business items, bringing us to new business. Item number 13, adoption of a resolution of the Dana Point City Council amending policy 112 relating to the acceptance and dedication of equipment. Mr. City Manager, do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Robert Sedita, our General Services Director, has your staff report tonight.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Item before you tonight is the adoption of Resolution 4, amendment of Policy 112 regarding the acceptance and dedication of equipment. Policy 112 was amended and reinstated in 2017, allowing for residents to purchase bronze memorial plaques to be placed on city benches throughout the city. Staff is recommending adoption of the resolution and amending Policy 112 to provide clarification of the policy and requirements, as well as providing the city manager authority to approve requests that do not specifically meet all requirements under the policy under extraordinary circumstances. That concludes my report. I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Closing public comments. I will bring it back to council. I will move the recommended action.
I will second that.
Thank you very much. I'll open it up for discussion. If anyone has any, Councilmember Wyatt, anything?
I don't have any. This just seems like a very sensible thing to do to allow us to not be so rigid that extraordinary circumstances don't allow us to make a better decision. So I think it seems like simply a cleanup of doing the obvious. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Lewis?
Yes, so just so I'm clear, how does this differ from what we have now? So is it the under extraordinary circumstances? And that gives some leeway?
That's correct.
Okay, to actually do this versus prohibiting?
That's correct.
And do we talk about anywhere what extraordinary circumstances means?
We don't, but if I could give an example, historically, we've done plaques that have recognized Dana Point residents, that have made contributions to the city over their lifetime. And those folks have been, deceased. There have been a couple of occasions in the past couple of years where families in Dana Point have experienced a terrible tragedy, the loss of a child, and wanted to seek recognition of that child in some of their favorite places to play. And the policy is not allowed for something like that to happen. And so this would allow for that to happen in those extraordinary circumstances.
And then that decision rests within the city manager's purview, right?
That's correct.
And does this allow people to actually build a bench? Or we're just talking about plaques on existing benches?
Just plaques.
Just plaques.
Yes.
And is there any provision in any of our policies if somebody wanted to donate money to build a new bench with a plaque? Or is that a whole nother policy we have to?
It is possible through the policy of acceptance and donation of equipment that someone could come to the city and request or get the approval for a purchase of a bench and a plaque.
And that would then fall under this extraordinary circumstances?
It could, certainly.
Okay.
For example, the city council recently approved a resolution allowing us to apply for grant monies from the state to refurbish Thunderbird Park. And as a part of that refurbishment, it's likely that there will be new additional benches being placed at that park. And at that time, folks could do that if they wish.
And do we have this policy doesn't seem to have a process for the people who want to apply. How do they know what needs to be done and what's the process?
We have an application process document they fill out. They submit it to Robert's department.
Okay. Does that need to be in our policy? How do we let residents know that this is, if you're interested in getting a plaque on a bench, we have this policy and here's what you do.
So on page 6 of supporting document B, it does talk about that the individual, group, or agency who desires to donate equipment should submit a request in writing to the city manager. And so we actually do that through Robert's department. He's created a form to do it, so they don't have to write a long letter or anything. It's an easier process to do.
Okay, and so this B, oh, I see. Okay, so that's acceptance and dedication. So that's all part of the process.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem Federico. Okay, with that, I will call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. That will bring us to item 14, the utility box artwork program. Mr. City Manager, do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the City Council knows, Economic Development Manager Kelly Renders has taken over the staff liaison role with the Arts and Culture Commission, and so she is here to make your presentation tonight.
Ms. Renders.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. As the staff liaison, I want to convey the excitement of the Arts and Culture Commission in their recommendation of the utility box program to you this evening. In an effort to contribute to the vitality and attractiveness of Dana Point streetscapes and create a vibrant and interesting environment, the Commission is recommending a call for artists to showcase their work on the first phase of utility boxes. Artwork is to be suitable for all ages. The program is phased based on the maintenance and replacement schedule of the boxes. Should the program move forward, we anticipate the first phase of boxes to be wrapped by this summer. A phase 2 is anticipated in 2022, again, when maintenance and replacement of the remaining boxes has been completed. Each box is estimated to cost approximately $1,000 for vinyl wrapping. And the program does not contemplate artist payments, as the boxes are an opportunity for artists to showcase their work publicly. The Commission will be receiving and evaluating the artwork and selecting the artists for the boxes. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment? Our first and only speaker tonight is Karen Schnell.
Good evening. My name is Karen Schnell. First off, I want to say thank you very much to our mayor and our city council. I'm Karen Schnell, and I'm a resident of Dana Point and a member of our Arts and Culture Commission. I want to begin by thanking all of you for all your continual support for the arts in Dana Point. The Arts and Culture Commission has been working on a utility box artwork program for a while. Thanks to the extensive work by the staff, thank you, Kelly, the Arts and Culture Commission is pleased to recommend this comprehensive program as presented this evening. Over the years, Dana Point has added many new artworks as seen at the entrance to Dana Point, including our Waterman's Plaza with sculptures and mosaics, and the bridge with murals, all representing the culture and history of Dana Point. We're excited to start this new pilot program, putting artwork on our utility boxes to contribute, as Kelly says, to the vitality and attractiveness of the city's streetscapes. I'm looking forward to seeing the creative entries that will enhance and beautify our city. It's a project that I must admit, initially years ago, how many of you ever pay attention to our utility boxes? You don't always look at them. But to go to other cities such as Costa Mesa, Huntington Beach, Santa Ana, our neighbor San Clemente, and to see what they have done, we're going to be really excited and really proud of our city, Dana Point. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Madam Clerk, do we have any additional public comments? With that, I will close public comment, bring it back to the council, and I will move the recommended action.
Second.
All right, with a motion and a second, we'll go around for any discussion. Councilman Wyatt?
No, I think it's a great idea. So total support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lewis?
Thank you. No, I'm very excited about this, and I probably am someone who paid a lot of attention to our boxes, and I thought, God, these are dull. And you go to these other cities and they're so imaginative. We just have these boxes hanging out there. So I think this is excellent. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Federico.
Just thanks to Kelly and the staff and to Karen and the Arts and Culture Commission for the hard work, and I think it'll look cool. Yeah, great.
Thank you very much. I also like to echo that great work by the Arts and Culture Commission and our staff as well. I don't have anything further to add. So with that, I'll call for the vote. Before we call for
Sorry.
the vote, Councilmember Lewis.
Just one question, that vinyl wrap, that's for graffiti and stuff?
They tend to be very durable, and they are coated so you can wash off graffiti and so forth.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anything in light of that? Very well. I will call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And we will move on to item 15, the selection of a contract for strategic plan, project, economic, and market profile study. Mr. City Manager, do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Economic Development Manager Kelly Renders will serve as the project manager for the strategic plan project, so she has your staff report tonight.
Ms. Renders.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. In 2018, the City of Dana Point adopted a strategic plan. The goal 5 was foster economic health and prosperity, and it includes a project to complete an analysis of economic and development conditions in the city. And it's to be used as a precursor for a general plan update. $100,000 was included in the budget for fiscal year 20, and in the fall of 2019, staff released a request for proposal. We are here before you tonight to recommend a firm to complete the study. PlaceWorks had the highest ranking amongst the 4 proposals received, and while costs came in relatively similar amongst the proposals, with 2 out of the 4 proposals came in at fixed fees of $100,000, PlaceWorks came in just under $100,000 at $99,882, and they provided hourly rates for team members and correlated those rates to time on tasks in more detail than the 3 other proposals. PlaceWorks also demonstrated a greater awareness of Dana Point and its neighborhoods and commercial areas, not only with more detail in their response to the scope of work, but with mentions of Town Center and Doheny Village in their proposal. Overall, coupled with their experience and knowledge of Dana Point and the detailed response to the scope of work and explanation of pricing, we're recommending this firm to the City Council. And they are here with us tonight. Brian Judd, the managing principal, and Steve Gunnels, the chief economist, are here. And I am available for any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
No, Mr. Mayor.
With that, I will close public comments, bring it back to council. I'll move the recommended action.
I will second that.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll start the discussion again, going around the horn. If Councilmember Wyatt have anything?
No, I mean, I looked through the proposal. I have lots of ideas, so, but I hopefully there will be lots of time to interact with that goes on. But the one thing that, if there's anything I've learned of being part of the council and being involved, is things don't move very fast. And so if you have, as you start to work on plans and infrastructure and look into the future, if you're not looking, 10 or 20 years ahead, it will be here before we can react to it. So we're starting to update the general plan, which was passed in 1991. I think it's well past due for an update. And the things in the general plan, we need to get as much information as we can possibly get about what things should be included in the general plan in terms of these areas. I mean, what opportunities exist for our cities as retail changes and as residential use changes, as our infrastructure moves from more than power, water, streets, to start to bring in all of the electronics that will take to be a smart city that will be required in infrastructure, and make sure we include that on whatever we think our city has to support. The underlying infrastructure has to be there. So my only feedback on this is, there's lots of interesting discussions to be had over the course of putting this together that are really worth bringing out and involving, not only city and council, but our public. And so I'm looking forward to that. I think so. We can't start soon enough, in my view. I guess that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Lewis?
Thank you. I see the term is through December 31st, 2020, and you anticipate that that's enough time?
Yes, I mean, we're hoping to get the study completed in 6 months, but, understanding that there may be additional items that need further review, we've allowed for some extra time.
Okay, so if it's not completed by December 31st, 2020, does it have to come back here? Or we've already got the money and you just extend the contract?
I think we put the authority for the contract to be extended, but again, we would like to get this study wrapped up by the summer.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Federico?
I've been an advocate for the economic and market profile study certainly for as long as I've been here, even though it's a relatively short time, but it informs all the long-term planning decisions that we make. So I'm a huge advocate for it. And from everything the staff tells me and from the information we have, PlaceWorks is the right partner for it. So I will certainly be in favor of this.
Thank you very much. Just one quick question. You may have mentioned it. Who came in with the bid of $96,930?
96,930.
You said two of them were 100,000 flat fee. This one was 99,882.
I think it was Place Dynamics. Let me look. Yes, Place Dynamics.
Place Dynamics. Okay. And I would like to note that what I was looking at was the overall rating. They came in at 2.03, while PlaceWorks came in at 3.95. So I assume that that made it an easy call to make this recommendation. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I do support this recommendation. So unless there's anything further in light of what has been said, I'm going to call for the vote. So all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. That brings us to the staff reports portion of the agenda. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, Happy New Year to everyone, and wanted to once again welcome our new Director of Community Development, Brenda Wisniewski, and hopefully her next meeting will not have an appeal on it.
Thank you very much, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to mention that, gosh, it must be 6 weeks ago now, after our last council meeting, staff prepared a press release that went out updating the public on the status of the litigation involving the Seaside Inn property. We're going to be putting out a new update to that press release in the next near future, here, next couple of days. I can just advise the public at this time that there really has not been a significant amount of change. The court continued in all matters that were pending before it from October 25th to January 31st. And so because of that, respite that the court imposed, there literally just has not been a whole lot of activity. I can report that the receiver has put together a comprehensive report that he'll be presenting to the court that we hope will be the subject of a lot of discussion come January 31st in an effort to continue to move this project forward. And that'll all be covered in the press release that we put out the next few days.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the adjournment of the meeting. The next regular meeting of the City Council will be February 4th, 2020 at 5 p.m. right here in the City Council chamber. With that, we are adjourned.